Hello, my name is Kelly Stokes. I'm going to be sharing my research that focuses on English primary schools in the focus on Ofsted, which is a performative culture policy. So because it's very much about English primary schools and headship and performativity, I thought I need to position myself in terms of who I am within my research. So I'm very much focused on me being a primary school teacher. Even though I have not been in the classroom for a couple of years now, I would still, if anyone met me, say that I was a primary school teacher, and I think I always will. So at the moment, I'm currently working as a school improvement partner across a multi-academy trust. I'm in my fourth year of my EdD at Institute of Education, University College London. I have inspected and I have been a head teacher. And what I wanted to do was research an area that was quite personal to me and that is impacting on my current job. So when I interviewed primary head teachers, one comment came out that really made me feel that this was about being deeply personal. And that was this. But there will get to a point where you give up. I do love my job, but it's just coming where I can't afford to do it. It's becoming unachievable. And this was something that really resonated with me. And it resonated because within my role currently, I'm finding it very challenging to recruit and retain teachers and leaders, but also because having been a primary head teacher. And I think my big thing is that there is a crisis at the moment. And we know that there is a crisis in education in terms of retention and recruitment. And that's something that I want to draw to your attention because it's a big part of not only what drove me to do this research, but also what I found. So the title of my research was Primary Head Teachers' Perceptions of Agency During a Performative Policy Change. The performative policy change was the shift in framework from a previous iteration to the 2019 framework that we have currently. Now, this performative policy that I'm identifying Ofsted's framework as came at a very challenging time in terms of it was just before the pandemic, and we've had since then a tragic death of a head teacher because from the coroner's report of Ofsted's change in judgment from outstanding to inadequate. So looking at that idea of perception of agency, I'm looking at the ecological agency definition in terms of Biesta, understanding the past impacting the present and the future. So some of the things that I found were resisting, reimagining, crumbling, and leaving from head teachers. And that's what I want to go into detail about in this video. So what I wanted to think about was within my qualitative research, where I interviewed 9 primary head teachers, and I used NVivo to store my data and help to analyse through reflective thematic analysis. I'll talk about my reflective journal a bit later and how, because of when I was collecting this data being during a time of real challenge because of the tragic death of Ruth Perry, that this was something that I found invaluable, my reflective journal. I wanted to think about agency, like I said previously, about the ecological model in terms of the past, the present, and the future. And I thought a really nice way of interviews not feeling like interviews for head teachers would be to get them to create their professional life history timeline, looking at the work of Amit and thinking about how head teachers who were chosen for the sample had been imposed as head teachers prior to the framework changes. Now, this is a head teacher's professional life history that they created prior to the interview, and they brought with them to the interview. They weren't all as beautiful as this and neatly coloured, but they really did create a third point of interest, something that people could look at and talk through. And then all I said was, tell me about your professional life history. And I could then just probe certain areas about what they felt were shifts when the framework came in. So what did I find? Well, all of our head teachers spoke about barriers to agency. They spoke about how these barriers were in terms of an increased workload, increase in pressure, and increase in uncertainty. This won't surprise a lot of you because previous research has found that these things have been impacting on head teachers since the creation of Ofsted. But what I wanted to be specific about was why this particular shift in framework made a difference to this perception of agency. So let's look at workload then. When the framework came in, there was a significant change of focus. There wasn't anything taken out of previous iterations of the framework, but what was added was a quality of education judgment that focused specifically on curriculum. So here we have one of our head teachers saying, I think that it has increased workload in terms of curriculum. And what I think they're thinking about here is what they did and the speed that they did it. So the comment of, but would I have done it that way that I did with the speed that I did it? Possibly not. Everyone's working seemingly harder. In terms of pressure, you know that if a school requires improvement, that has a massive impact. Yeah, I think Ofsted is such an impactful experience. In terms of uncertainty, because the shift came on curriculum, head teachers are asking themselves now, well, when the next framework comes in, so many policies contradicting what the next focus could be. What I wanted to then think about was, with this perception of agency being seen as decreased because of this performative policy change, what were the behaviours? Now, I mentioned in my opening, in my title, we had head teachers resisting. So this was seen through different ways, for example, subverting things on inspections. There was reimagining, where you could hear head teachers having changed their discourse to align to that of the government's. You could see a crumbling of heads where they had to take time off on stress for their mental health. And actually, really significantly, back to my second slide in terms of the crisis of retention and recruitment, out of the 9 head teachers that I interviewed, 2 have now left the profession. So in terms of behaviours then, I'm going to read through some of our data, and I'm going to try and be true to how I felt that it was said in the interviews. But obviously you have to remember my positionality, so I will be as fair as I can when I'm reading these. Isabel talked about how she resisted, and this resistance came in the form of subverting the inspection. In primary schools in England, Ofsted have made it very clear that their quality of education judgment sits with a very big emphasis on reading, and the reading is through phonics specific teaching, and that the DFE accredited schemes should be used, and if not, something equally as good in terms of Ofsted language. This is a head teacher who spoke about her passion around teaching children to see letters in a joined up way when you're teaching them when they enter reception, and her discussion around this helping with handwriting and spelling. For an accredited scheme, the programme is very clear that you should print all letters and all words when teaching children in reception. This is what Abigail said. We teach cursive writing in reception right from the start, and yet DFE accredited programmes would say not to, and Ofsted will say no. We had a big chat as a staff. We're going to stick with this cursive as we believe it. Then we had a phonics audit. The lady came round and was watching. Both of them, the teachers, printed the words. We didn't even comment on it afterwards. And I think that whole idea about not even commenting on it afterwards was that they believe a particular way in their school, and they do that. When someone comes in, they show them what they want to see, and they don't think anything of that. In terms of reimagining, we are looking at neoliberalism. We're looking at schools being in a discourse of markets and competition. And this is how Dave feels about his school. And I'm talking about this being reimagining. So about changing the discourse to align with that of the government's language. He says, actually, the secret to this business, making sure I get enough children. So I've got the money to do a good job, a decent prospectus that looks glossy to attract those parents who basically want free private school. This is how my school will survive. It's getting quite hard-headed and businesslike to focus a bit more on marketing, quite pragmatic about SATs results, kind of a benchmark for how well the school is doing. Over my time as head, I've probably got better at doing the things people notice. It's just a game. This is why I don't have any guilt about it. Fine, if that's the game, I'll play it. In terms of crumbling and mental health, Hannah spoke about, I sobbed and I sobbed and sobbed. Probably that Ofsted was the lowest point. I was very close to leaving. And as said, the actual people who left, 2 out of the 9, 1 took early retirement and 1's gone for a change of career. So I had to change my whole curriculum, Eleanor said, an outlook, and change lots of things. And it all came to a crunch. Felt de-skilled, humiliated. Felt every day was a fight to keep doing what we wanted to be doing. Stress levels. One of the reasons why I took an earlier exit than I wanted to was because for my health and well-being, I needed to. The pressure got too much. So from that, I thought about this agency idea of the past, the present, and the future. I thought about how the professional life histories allowed me to see the prior experience in the past of these head teachers and all of these different swirling experiences that they've had, and how across our education system has been a growing performativity agenda. How we can see there in the middle a head teacher coming to the point where the Ofsted framework is changed, how they're hitting these barriers of perceived pressures of workload, uncertainty, and how through those they're then having these 4 projected futures, either through resisting, reimagining, crumbling, or leaving to get their desired outcome. I was able to present this at the Early Career Framework BERA conference a few years ago, and from that they asked me to do a blog of what I found, and that's my blog on the left-hand side there. And then my next part of my doctorate is a proposal is in to look a bit closer at some of the comments that the head teachers had said, in particular about the idea of their curriculum and the prescription of the curriculum through this framework. So I'm looking at ideas around inspecting Ofsted's impact on teaching and learning, and calling it a deep dive. So thank you very much for listening, and my email is at the bottom there if you want to get in touch. Thank you.